It's so hard to know if you should stay in a safe relationship, even though it's dull, or break up with that person so that you can try for something more romantic and wild and risky, frankly, and then hope that it turns into actual love. These are two extremes that are almost irresistible to people who grew up with trauma. Totally safe or totally dangerous. What is harder is forming a relationship that has elements of both. So my letter today is from a woman I'll call Sage, and she writes, "Hi, Anna. I'm so lost. I don't know if I should break up with my partner of 15 years or if it's just limerence and CPTSD talking. Could you help me get some clarity?" All right, I've got my fairy pencil. I'm going to go through and circle things I want to go back to on a second reading, but let's go through the letter and see what's going on in Sage's life. All right, she writes, "Hi, Anna. I'm so lost. I don't know if I should break up with my partner of 15 years or if it's just the limerence and CPTSD talking. Could you help me get some clarity?" All right, I've got my fairy pencil. I'm going to go through and circle things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's go through and see what's going on in Sage's life. She says, "I grew up in an abusive and neglectful household. My father was distant and psychologically abusive. My mom has severe CPTSD and mental health issues. She scapegoated me, exhibited weird sexual behavior toward me, blamed her self-harm attempt on me, thought I was her mother from a past life, etc. My stepfather was physically and emotionally abusive. I grew up poor, but there was also purposeful withholding of food and basic needs. I don't know if I was sexually abused. My mom said I was, but she's not a reliable source. I have been with my partner, Gabe, for 15 years. We were good friends for a few years, had sex one night, and then his lease was up a few weeks later, so I said he could move in with me. We've been together ever since. Gabe is my first relationship, my first everything. He's solid, generous, easygoing, and takes care of me in ways that feel unimaginable. Buys groceries, brings home dinner all the time, does more than his share of chores around the house, insists on dropping me off and picking me up so I don't have to take the bus, and so on. We're both 42 years old. I feel incredibly guilty that he takes such good care of me, and I feel even worse that I keep thinking of breaking up with him. Gabe shuts down during relationship conversations. I've gotten to the point where I rarely bring up anything important because I know it will just be incredibly painful for me. He won't talk, will start playing on his phone, etc. If I ask if he needs some time to process, he'll say yes, and then he'll forget, quote, unquote, what we were talking about. I feel like I've tried everything and I'm resentful. I don't want to be intimate with him anymore, and I feel myself recoiling when I am. He won't go to couples counseling or do any formal relationship self-help together. I joined an online artist forum about a year ago and have made some amazing friends there. I'm ashamed to say that I've become limerent on one of my friends. Let's call him Jack. He is kind, funny, thoughtful, talented, takes what I say seriously, and we share a lot of the same values and interests. We became friends, and I believe he was starting to develop romantic feelings for me until I scared him off. I started obsessing over him and became desperate for his attention, emailing way too much, commenting on every post, over-the-top flirting, etc. He pulled back. In his last email to me, he said he's going through a difficult patch and would contact me once he feels better. It has been over a month, and I doubt I'll ever hear from him in a meaningful way again. He continues to like my posts and compliment my art. I feel so much shame for the way I've acted. I know I crossed a line with Jack, and I tried to tell Gabe about this, but he stopped me and said he didn't want to know. I don't know what to do. I think about breaking up with my partner every day, but I don't know if that's the right decision. I don't trust my judgment because I know deep down I'm hoping a breakup would lead to my limerent object and me getting together. I can't imagine a healthy person would ever want me. The thought of breaking Gabe's heart and leaving him all alone feels worse than death. I don't think I have it in me. I'm so heartbroken and sad. I don't want to make things worse than they already are. Thank you for all you do. Okay. All right. I've got you, Sage. Thank you for this letter. I don't think this is an uncommon situation for a lot of people with trauma. So first of all, considering what you came from, that you got into a stable relationship all this time, that is an accomplishment. And I'm not saying that as like, now you have to stay in it. That's still a choice for you, but just, good job being in a safe relationship. I think sometimes it can be a lucky break to land in a really, really safe relationship when we've been through all this. What you described with your parents just sounds awful. Psychologically abusive, distant dad, your mother mentally ill, kind of having all this like woo-woo magical inappropriate stuff with you. It just sounds like you were on your own and nobody was meeting your needs. This is exactly kind of the toxic environment where a person can become a limerent adult. That sort of childhood often translates to a limerent adult. And I'm just looking at the evidence. I'm looking at the people who write into me with limerence, and it's so often this type of background. It's alcoholism or it's some kind of thing where nothing is real. They don't get you as a person. They can't really hear you about your needs. And so I think, part of what we do growing up like that, because I grew up like that too, is you come up with a toughness. You're like, that's okay. See, I can kind of meet my own needs. I don't need people to give me all that love stuff and all that depth, and I can make do because I have my imagination. It's a survival strategy when we're kids, but when it carries into adulthood, like it sounds like it is for you, it becomes a liability. It makes it so that you can't really love anybody, not properly, and you can't really receive love either. Okay, so let me just go through and tell you back what you told me. 15 years, good friends for a few years, then had sex one night and his lease was up, so you said he could move in with you, and you've been together ever since. That is what I call a casual origin story, where it wasn't really an intentional falling in love and decision to be together. But you lived with your best friend, and how convenient it is when a best friend becomes like a partner and they can be that everything to you. And I totally get like hoping it would work out. It's not crazy to have tried, right? So he was your first relationship, your first everything, and he's really nice and he takes care of you with groceries and food and chores and drops you off and picks you up so you don't have to take the bus. And you're 42, so perhaps your age is starting to factor into what you think is possible for you. But I would just say at 42, the one thing that I suppose is a question is children, but relationships are certainly possible. You could have a different one if you wanted to. So you feel really guilty because he takes good care of you, and you feel worse that you keep thinking of breaking up with him. And then what you described was some pretty hardcore emotional avoidance or emotional unavailability. And isn't that, I don't think it's a coincidence that your parents were so unable to meet your needs and you've been able to make it work for 15 years with somebody who can't deal with a conversation about feelings. You got good at that as a kid. That was your survival. Now it's a real drag. And of course you're unfulfilled. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this thing where it's very painful. Yeah. You can't bring up anything important because he'll just look at his phone. You'll say, do you need time to process? You're like throwing him that softball. Are you not listening to me because you need time to process? And he'll say, yeah. And then he forgets and you never talk about it. And you've tried everything. You're resentful. And you don't want to have sex anymore. It's not attractive. And he won't go to couples counseling. So that's really unfortunate. He won't do any kind of formal self-help. He's kind of prepared to just coast on through the whole rest of his life, not really dealing with feelings or you or closeness. He can just do chores, and probably the no sex thing will be something for him, but I don't know. It sounds like he might be the kind of person who will just put up with it whatever he has to. He was trying to be safe. He wants to be safe. So then you got into this online forum a year ago and you made some great friends, and then you became limerent on a guy. We called him Jack. You gave me that name. And he's kind and funny and thoughtful and talented, and he takes what you say seriously. So yeah, he's the sort of guy who might be more appropriate for you socially. Of course, there's always that. And then there's the, will they actually live with you and be your partner? And I just want to say, with Gabe, your 15-year partner, there's a reason why you guys haven't gotten married in all these years. 15 years, I'm just thinking. So you were 27 when you got together. That's an age when people would normally be thinking about that. And I know some people don't ever get married, but I'm just going to call it out and say there's a reason why you're not doing that. That it didn't become this big commitment for either of you, unless there's some backstory that you haven't shared with me. So it does sound like, dare I say it, both of you just needed a place to rest for a while. And you're rested up now. So you're starting to, your heart's starting to look around, your eyes are looking around. You think that maybe this guy Jack at the art group was starting to develop romantic feelings. So it's an online forum. So I just want to point out, online is never a place where you can gauge whether a relationship is legit. Like, a lot can happen between online everything and meeting in person. And for people online dating, it's often, and I know you're not dating, but it's often recommended that before things start turning into a great big fantasy about the person, that you meet in person, because the chemistry, the physical chemistry and the reality of who they are, people have a much harder time. It's not that it can't be done, but it's a lot harder to pretend you're somebody you're not when you meet in person with somebody. So I don't know, maybe he's far away, which could be part of the appeal, frankly. If Gabe is your only relationship and you've never really been that close with him and you were content to stay there, I can see that you wanted safety, but it's also possible that just like he's avoidant in his way, you're avoidant in your way. And honestly, Limerance feels like it's like, oh, it's not avoidant, it's the opposite. No, it's avoidance, because it's a way that we take all our emotional energy and tie it up in something that's not happening. And then we can't give it to anybody, not Gabe, not a person who's in your life. So this guy, Jack, you scared him off. And I question a little bit, do you know that? I wonder if you've had sufficient communication with him. But you said, I started obsessing over him and became desperate for his attention. All right, so all he would know is your behavior, not your intentions or feeling. You say you emailed way too much, and he may have noticed that, you're right, maybe. Commenting on every post, over the top flirting, and he pulled back. So first, I just want to say, do you actually know? I don't know, maybe you do, maybe he said something, but you don't tell me that. In the last email, he said he's going through a difficult patch and would contact me once he feels better. So yeah, that does feel like a brush off. That's often what people say. They don't want to directly reject you. And it's been over a month and you don't feel that he's ever coming back. Possibly you're right. He continues to like your posts and compliment your art. But here's the thing. He'd be nuts to get together or start a relationship with somebody who lives with a partner of 15 years. He would not be a good partner if that's what he did. So I just want to point out to you that you can't gauge somebody, A, online, B, while you're in a relationship and sitting on the fence about it. You can't gauge it. Now, let's say you break up with Gabe and you get on your own for a while, you stay connected to Jack, and then after a while, you can start to, kind of float the idea, could this be a dating relationship? Then and only then would you have an idea what was going on. Anybody who tried to get together with you while you were living in a relationship, that's a red flag for them. Needless to say, it's a red flag about you. So let's say he's healthy. He's healthy. He sees your red flag, and he's not going to take your red flag. All right? That could be a good thing. I don't want to give you false hope. I just think that what's unrealistic here is that you can find your next boyfriend while you're with the current one. And that just seldom works out well, and I don't recommend it. Because you're between total boredom and full-on limerance, like these two things, which one do I do? I don't think you do either of them, honestly. Maybe Jack is going to turn out in the future, but what you're telling me about your feelings about Gabe, it's very sad because he's very loyal, but he's incapable of emotional intimacy. So that is a real problem. And if he's really not going to go to counseling or anything, I would say it's not going to change. And even if he did go to counseling, even when couples do that, it doesn't guarantee there's a change. It's not super likely. There might be a shift and then a shift that sort of falls apart if one person was only doing it to save the relationship. So I don't know. It doesn't sound that great. And I'm sad about that because someone who will take care of you in the way that Gabe does is very hard to find. It's a precious thing. But I think you're going to be unfulfilled and falling in love with other people, until the cows come home, until you don't have that in your heart anymore, maybe because you're old. being with somebody, getting married with somebody, it's like there's this, draw on multiple levels. They're your best friend. They've got your back. They can be with you and are willing to be with you. There's a romantic and erotic charge to the whole thing. And yes, that comes down over time, but the fundamental has to be there. It has to be there to sort of return to and keep you knitted together. Feeling repulsed by them, recoiling, that's not a good sign. So I'm sure it's terrifying for you, but it's hard to hurt somebody like that and let them down. It's a big deal. But there you are. You wouldn't be the first couple to split up. So that sounds like what your heart is telling you to do. Now, you take me with a grain of salt. I don't know your right thing to do, but I'm just telling you what you're telling me. This Jack guy, yeah, he's very, very, very hypothetical. He's your fantasy object of what else is possible. And maybe that's just the fantasy that's kicking up in your consciousness because you're so unfulfilled in the relationship right now. It doesn't feel like your man who you're living with right now. It doesn't feel like that. You take a risk when you leave this relationship that you'll never find somebody again. I'm sure you think about that. It could happen, but here's what, or you'll find people and it'll just be a lot of trouble and drama and you'll be sorry that you lost Mr. Steady Eddie. But here's the thing. What I hear in you is you're not ready for a relationship. You're not ready. You're not emotionally available. How do you do that, right? How you become emotionally available is you clear the decks. You can't have entanglements with guys you're not into. Healthy people are not drawn to people who are already in a relationship and shut down emotionally, and living a lie and carrying secrets and stuff. It is the stuff of TV and it does happen in people's lives, but it usually ends up being a sad and regrettable and painful memory. Occasionally, I suppose it leads to a marriage, but even so. So I am just going to say, if you feel very strongly that you want to have that kind of romantic love that you're longing for with Jack or anybody else, it's time to be single. It's time to spend some time living your own life, getting on your own feet as a single person. Because if you're going to date, dating is like, there's a lot of risk in it, right? That they'll be like, you'll fall in love, but it won't work out. And what's absolutely essential so that you don't end up in another like dependency where, it's mere safety for you, somebody's looking out for you, but you're repulsed by sex with them. That's going to happen again if you're just going and trying to grasp at anybody without changing. It's weird how, as within, so without. That saying, as above, so below, as within, so without. That thing that isn't fixed inside is just going to keep sort of expressing itself through that type of relationship again and again. And if it's not through the exact form like Gabe, it'll be something else, some other kind of unavailability. And that would be a shame. That would be a shame. You have the opportunity to have a genuine, true, full relationship here. And so a person needs to do some healing inside. And people always wave at that like, oh, do some healing. You have to get whole. You have to love yourself. Blah, blah, blah. Like, what is anybody even talking about? And so that is a discovery process for each person. And some people do it in therapy. Some people do it through participating in things that they really, really care about, like finally stepping up and engaging in something like a group activity or a professional pursuit that they really care about. But somehow when you become more fully expressed as who you are, it will start to change the cast of characters in your life, and they'll start to be more like you, more suitable to you. And so things begin to change. And the worst thing that we can do when we need a change is to be still. It's just to sit there and hide from it. We need to be in action, and it often hurts. It's like hard to get out and put your neck out and try things and be honest with people and attend something by yourself and find somebody to go to dinner with once in a while and figure out who's going to spend the holidays with you and all of that stuff. I've been there, and it's a hard thing, and it's tempting to just hold on to the safe thing forever. But I don't think it's a service to somebody who loves you to stay with them and prevent them from being with somebody who loves them just as much. So that's my 2 cents on Gabe. When you have a happy life, when you're fulfilled, when you're having fun, I think your propensity towards limerence is going to come down a little bit. You're not going to have to project the whole excitement of the future on this person who's only online, who's not really with you. You have the safety of already being in a relationship. So It starts to require a lot of courage, right? To be a person who's not in a safe relationship. And just for anybody who just tuned in, when I say not in a safe relationship, I don't mean abuse-wise. I mean somebody who's not with the, bland relationship where you're never alone, but your emotional needs are just sitting there waiting for somebody who gets you to come along. It would be nice, right? So sometimes it takes time. It takes a leap of faith. In your case, since you're asking me, it sounds like it might be the right thing to do. When you say leaving him alone feels worse than death, that's sort of a sign of love. It might be. I don't know. It could also just be a lot of guilt that you haven't processed because you don't have a good way to heal your trauma. So I just want to encourage you. Do you have a way to start relieving your emotions and your guilt? Like guilt is resentment at yourself. Shame is resentment at yourself. Fear of leaving. Limerance is a reaction to a lot of fear, and it's a retreat. It's a form of isolation. We isolate and avoid people when we can't deal, when it's too overwhelming for us. So you can learn about these things and start to treat the underlying problem that dealing with people is intense for you. It's overwhelming. Maybe you don't feel well enough equipped to deal with it, so you always need it really safe or so dangerous it can't work out. Why do I know this? Don't ask, but I have a book, Re-Regulated, that you can check out and learn my method for healing. It's very simple. You can use it whether or not you have access to professional help to deal with being dysregulated, getting overwhelmed, disconnecting from people and the strange behaviors that go with that, and then the self-defeating behaviors like staying in a loveless relationship or getting limerent on somebody who is not into you, right? So you can check that out. I also have courses, including a free one called The Daily Practice. You can always try that. In the short run, I want to leave you with a download called How to Get Ready for a Great Relationship, to just reflect on where are you ready and where are you not ready. Not ready means you've got stuff to work on, and you might want to prioritize that. So that's a free download. I've got it right here, and I will see you very soon.